everyone. I'm Hsing-ay at the Nutmeg studio in New York City, and I am so excited to be having a great conversation with Catherine Beeson. And you are in Denver, Colorado today, correct?
Today I am in Denver, Colorado.
We met very recently because you are the new executive director at the Longmont Symphony Orchestra, and I just had a wonderful experience collaborating with you there. It was so much fun working with you because even though there's all these crazy COVID related challenges and last minute changes and whatnot, you and I were able to keep the connection between us alive. And so it was really fun to, it was almost like a dance, like, can we keep our connection while the world is turning upside down? And you're
Yeah.
so great with that, of staying connected. I wanted to tap your brain about, the messages that the world is sending to girls who are growing up at a time where I feel like, even with the Me Too movement and all that, I think that change is slow to happen, and a lot of that is the confusing messages that girls get when they do something. They're expected to do it so well. Like if you play an instrument, then you have to compete and excel. Feeling like that if they're going to express themselves, then somehow they are responsible for an outcome or an expectation instead of just being able to have the freedom to fail. What are some of the obstacles that girls face, specifically because of the expectations the world is bringing?
You know, I'm no expert on this subject, and it's funny to say that because I'm a woman, so you think it's baked in somehow, but it's hard for me to say what might be particularly difficult for girls or for women versus what's just difficult because of this thing that we do, right? It's so subjective. The arts are so subjective, and that's part of the magic of the arts. But I will say that I have a son and a daughter, and both of them are creative in their own ways. And certainly what I see is for my son, he's sort of allowed, just socially allowed, to experiment and try things and be an inventor. And that's what boys do. And girls can experiment and try things and be inventors, but there are more lines and more boxes to have to fit into than I think boys have. And so then my concern is that girls are super adaptable, just like, I mean, all kids, right? Super adaptable. But the more that they see us, their mothers, um, struggling with that, how to fit inside that box and also push those walls, they may find that that's their role as well. You know, they see their mothers doing this, they see their aunties doing this, they see, other women, teachers, family members, etc. Um, Even very famous and very successful women struggling with how to push on those walls, but still remain inside them, right? And whether we know we're doing it or not, you know. And so I think I see this, and I know it's very personal to be talking about my own children, but I mean, they're my test subjects, right? I lived with them for all these years. And they're adults now. They're 21 and 18, and they're expressing themselves in beautiful ways in the world that just make me so happy. But I do think that it is a real concern for girls as they, especially as they move through an arts pathway, that they feel that there are limitations on that subjectivity. Like, I have an idea, but it may be way over here, and I need to have my ideas be between these posts, you know, for anyone to pay attention to them. And so that I think is really difficult.
Yeah, I liked what you were saying about that girls are super adaptable, and the hard thing I know from my daughter is that, just because they are able to do something doesn't mean that it's easy or it doesn't have a really high cost emotionally and for their own identity to be going against what they want to do and to suppress their own motivations and their own desires. And then the other thing is, I feel like there is more maybe social awareness with girls, that they can see when there is disapproval, and there's just so much awareness of what is being encouraged and what is being discouraged, and that's hard to untangle from.
It is. And I think, especially since we're talking about this in an arts perspective, I mean, I just come back over and over again to the fact that this field is so extremely highly subjective, you know? I don't know, I keep returning back to figure skating all the time because it's a great example, okay? But figure skating is so difficult because, you know, there are the physical, you know, elements that can be counted, okay? The number of spins. And then there's this whole other scoring system that's just about beauty and expression. And I mean, you know, it's impossible really to even begin to consider how judges decide what is beauty on a scale, right? What is the you know, is it enough expression or too little expression? Is it the right expression or the wrong expression? Is it acceptable or unacceptable? You know, all of these things are so strange. But this is exactly kind of the world of the performer, right? You have what the composer wrote, all the notes and the timings of each of the notes, and sort of the ideas of shapes and things like that. And then you have the interpretation of that from the artist, right? So so there's this idea that there's a basket of rules that you just get to know, and that you are, by virtue of, you know, interpretation or expression, you're deciding which rules to follow and which rules to break. But I mean, even that is a strange concept. And so in that context, you know, boys, and to a degree men, are expected to, especially in a country like the United States that's founded on this principle of discovery and invention, and, you know, all of this like great genius, right? We have this sort of cloak of striking out and doing a new thing, right? And that is a very male-centric, you know, celebrated viewpoint, right? And it's harder, I think, for females to inhabit that sort of Amelia Earhart kind of, you know, space, because our female role is just not oriented toward striking out and doing a new thing and making your way without a lot of judgment about, you know, aren't you going to have a family? Who's keeping track of the home? These kinds of things, you know. And ultimately, I think the pressures on women and the pressures on men are different, and not at all equal. And these are things that we can address and speak about without having to feel like we have to rail and, you know, get really ranty. But to have it acknowledged would be nice, you know, right? Especially for our daughters. And you know, I'm always aware of that when I'm working with other people. I'm aware more and more lately of my own shortcomings, my own biases, my own what I bring to the table that might shore up those problems or create more problems. I'm trying really hard all the time to step around those things. So teaching, the more teaching I do and the more advocacy I do, the more people will reflect back to me where I'm failing, and then I can begin to succeed, right?
I think I call it the Cinderella Syndrome, where you feel like you don't get to go out into the world until you've, you know, peeled all the potatoes. But then, you know, on the other side, though, I am so much more emotionally happy and fulfilled when my family is doing well. And so I have this urge to make sure to do everything I can to take care of them. So that's a difficult balance when I am so sensitive to their well-being first. The nice positive side is that when they're doing well, I am so energized. I have more resources to draw from. And I wanted to maybe celebrate some of the women role models that we do have in concert music, including yourself. And I think that, you know, when I was growing up and all my role models were males, it didn't quite work for me because what was seen as confident in them when I put it on was seen as like controlling. And I think that, you know, having female role models is really a wonderful thing. You've worked with Marin Alsop at Colorado, and tell us like some of the women who are in places of power and leadership.
I mean, look, Marin Alsop is a towering figure in the symphonic world for sure. I had a chance to work with her a little bit when I was freelancing in New York City, and then very shortly after that, I successfully auditioned for my spot with the Colorado Symphony, and she was music director there or here at the time. I'm like, my brain is sort of in New York and also in Colorado right now with my memories. And so I did have the great good fortune to work with her here in Denver for many years. And the more I learned about her and sort of her early life and her early career, I thought, wow, I mean, it really is just that you have to keep going and going and going and going. And she is someone that just, I think, I mean, this is me speaking about her, you know, from an outsider's point of view, but she seems like someone who just had singular vision from a very young age, that this was what she wanted to do. This was what she needed to do. This was what she had to do. And that kind of never give up spirit, never give up trying, never give up learning, never give up doing, never give up, just push, push, push. If someone is not able or willing to open a door for you, but you can jam your foot right in there, then you should, you know. And she is someone that I think is really concerned with stewardship, and that was a wonderful thing for me to note and to learn from. She champions other female conductors and has been for quite a long time. She champions contemporary literature from living composers and has been for a long time doing that. She recognizes that she is part of this huge, long pathway of human genius, and that it's you know, been here for thousands of years before us, and it's going to be here for thousands of years after us. That this is a privilege to be a part of that pathway. And you know, it seems like as long as there's breath in this woman, she's going to continue, you know, lifting. And when she lifts others, she lifts herself. And so you don't have to be self first, right? And you also don't have to be selfless. You know, you can bring your ego into this and still lift all ships, you know. So that was a really important lesson for me to learn, to stake out your space and still make space for others, you know. So I mean, then everyone wins. So she was a huge influence on me at a relatively early part of my career. She was a huge influence on me for sure.
Do you have any advice for young kids now on how to find a mentor, how to find someone to guide them?
I am intensely curious, and so I wanted to just say that that's the foundation for everything, right? If you can grow curiosity, you can find a way to answer those questions that you're growing, right? And the more curious you are, it almost sort of, besides seeding that, it sort of pushes it, right? It makes an imperative almost to find the answers to these curiosity questions. And then just to be thinking creatively all the time about how, you know, who are the people that you can identify as successful? Why do they seem successful to you? In what ways do you want to emulate that kind of success? In what ways do you not? How can you, once you've identified these characteristics, how can you find that in another person that may have the capacity to give that back to you? And then just don't ever be afraid to ask. I mean, the one thing that's sure in this life is that if you don't ask, you definitely won't get, right? And the other thing that's sure in this life is that if you ask, you're definitely going to sometimes hit the jackpot and sometimes not, right? So what's the worst thing that's going to happen is that you'll hear thanks but no thanks, you know. And you just keep trying, keep knocking on the doors, keep jamming your foot in there. So I have been set on pathways by so many wonderful people that I didn't realize at the time when I met them that it was setting me on a pathway. Or I would wake up to that meeting many years later and realize it had shaped me somehow, shaped my thinking or the way that I move through the world. So just being super curious, super observant, and open to making connections in that moment or way after the fact is so important. And then, having a little bit of chutzpah doesn't hurt. Another person that I consider a kind of a seminal mentor is Deborah Borda. And I don't know if she would consider me a mentee as much as I consider her a mentor, but that's allowed, right? I can pick a person like Deborah, who's in the public spotlight, and follow her and learn from her, even though she doesn't know that I'm doing it, right? But I did lightly stalk her and show up to an event and ask her for some advice, which she was very happy to give me. And then we formed a little bit of a relationship after that, and it was enough to send me on this pathway toward arts administration, and really change my life in some really interesting ways. So my relationship with Marin as a mentor was very close. We worked together for many years. My relationship with someone like Deborah Borda, very passing, small amount of time, really intense engagement. But these are lessons that I carried forward and continued to learn from, even though I was in a space very far away from Deborah Borda's, grand circle,